Comes to Mark Meadows, this seems very important. When it comes to Mark Meadows, we also today got a brand new, previously unheard assertion from his top deputy, Cassidy Hutchinson, about what Mark Meadows did around this time and why he did it. Now, we don't know why they held this piece of Cassidy Hutchinson testimony until today. We've heard so much from her in previous hearings, both on tape and in live testimony. But it is possible that the investigators on the January 6th committee have held this back until today.
Right now, we do have some breaking news to get to you. Former President Donald Trump posted on his Truth social account that he expects to be arrested on Tuesday. This comes as a New York prosecutor is viewing charges in a case where hush money was paid to adult film star Stormy Daniels ahead of the 2016 presidential elections. Trump is urging his followers to protest. New York law enforcement officials have been making security preparations in case Trump is indicted. ABC News has not verified the claims, and the Manhattan District Attorney's Office has not commented about the post or possible arrest.
Okay, what I'm about to tell you is huge, and it may be the biggest betrayal yet from inside Trump's circle. Mark Meadows, Trump's former chief of staff, the man who was with Trump every day in the White House, who witnessed everything, who sat in every meeting, who knew every plan, he has now flipped. He's working with prosecutors. He's giving testimony. He's turning over documents. And what he's revealing is extremely damaging. We're talking about detailed firsthand accounts describing Trump leading an effort to overturn the 2020 election. We're talking about documented evidence showing Trump knew the fraud claims were not true, but continued pushing them anyway. We're talking about meeting notes and text messages that directly connect Trump to the fake elector plan and the pressure campaign aimed at Mike Pence. This is exactly the kind of evidence prosecutors hope to get. An insider who witnessed everything, who kept the records, who can testify about what Trump said and did behind closed doors. And Capitol Hill is in an uproar because everyone understands what this could mean. This is the turning point. This is the evidence that makes prosecution not only possible, but unavoidable.
The chief of staff is obviously the most loyal person to the president. They're the closest person in many ways to the president. But I cannot explain Mark Meadows in my own mind.
Well,
This is guy, he's like a garden variety birther Tea Partier congressman from North Carolina. He's not like a Ted Cruz who like styles himself as some sort of 1776 like redux revolutionary. Like he's just some guy who becomes chief of staff. And why is he willing to risk jail? I mean, he got like $1 million for his PAC from the slush fund. $1 million ain't worth lying for the president of the United States and fomenting a coup. I cannot make it make sense in my...
Some background, because you need to understand who Mark Meadows is and why his cooperation matters so much. Meadows wasn't just another White House employee. He was Trump's chief of staff. That's the highest position in the White House after the president. The chief of staff controls who gets access to the president, oversees White House operations, coordinates between different offices, attends nearly every major meeting, reviews important documents, and knows about major decisions. If you want to understand what a president is doing and why, you talk to the chief of staff because they know everything. And Meadows was Trump's chief of staff during the most important period during the 2020 election, during the effort to challenge the results, and during January 6th. He was there for all of it, witnessed all of it, took part in all of it, and now he's telling prosecutors everything he knows. From Trump's point of view, this is the ultimate betrayal because Meadows was supposed to stay loyal. He was supposed to be one of the people who would never turn against Trump under any circumstances. And for a long time, that appeared to be true. Meadows defended Trump in public, refused to cooperate with congressional investigations, and stood beside Trump even as other former officials began distancing themselves. But something changed. Maybe it was the amount of evidence against him. Maybe it was prosecutors warning him about serious charges. Maybe it was his attorneys convincing him that cooperation was his only path forward. Whatever the reason, Meadows decided that protecting himself was more important than protecting Trump. And now he's giving prosecutors everything they need to build a strong case. And what he's revealing is extremely damaging. According to reports about his testimony, Meadows told prosecutors that Trump was repeatedly warned by his own advisors that there was no evidence of widespread election fraud, that White House lawyers, campaign attorneys, and even Trump's own attorney general told him the election was not stolen, that the fraud claims had no basis, and that he had lost fairly. But Trump didn't care. He continued pushing the stolen election story anyway. He kept claiming fraud even after being told there was none. That quote s, not someone who truly believed the election was stolen. That quote as someone who knew the facts but continued repeating a false claim because it helped him. And Meadows can testify to all of that. He can describe the meetings where Trump was told there was no fraud. He can identify the people who warned Trump. He can provide a timeline showing Trump knew the facts but continued promoting false claims anyway. But it gets even worse. Meadows has also testified about Trump's direct role in the fake elector plan. This was the effort where Trump's team created alternate groups of electors in states Biden won. These alternate electors would claim to be the legitimate electors and attempt to have Congress count their votes instead of the official electoral votes. It quote s fraud. It quote s conspiracy. It quote s an attempt to overturn a legitimate election through deception. And according to Meadows, Trump wasn't simply aware of this plan. He was actively involved in it. He attended meetings about it. He approved memos related to it. He directed his team to work with Giuliani and other lawyers involved in the fake elector effort. Meadows can explain Trump's involvement in detail. He can describe specific meetings. He can identify who said what. He can connect Trump directly to alleged criminal conduct. And then there's the pressure campaign aimed at Mike Pence. Meadows has testified about Trump's efforts to persuade Pence to reject electoral votes during the January 6th certification. About the meetings where Trump pressured Pence. About the legal memos claiming Pence had powers he did not actually have. About Trump's anger when Pence refused to follow the plan. All of this is firsthand testimony from someone who was in the room, who witnessed those conversations, and who can describe Trump's mindset and intentions. That quote s extremely valuable for prosecutors because intent is often one of the hardest things to prove. You have to show that the defendant knew their actions were wrong and chose to continue anyway. And Meadows can provide that evidence. He can testify that Trump knew he lost, knew the fraud claims were false, knew the fake elector plan was illegal, but continued pursuing it anyway because he wanted to remain in power. The documents Meadows is providing make this even more damaging. We're talking about White House memos, meeting notes, text messages, email exchanges, all showing Trump's role in these efforts, all linking him directly to alleged criminal activity. This isn't just Meadows' word against Trump, quote s. This is written evidence, material that can be presented to a jury that supports Meadows' testimony and strengthens the case. Legal analysts are calling this a turning point because that's exactly what it is. This is the kind of evidence that can make convictions much more likely, that reduces doubt, that paints a clear picture of guilt. Capitol Hill is in an uproar because everyone understands what this could mean. This is the moment. This is when Trump's legal troubles become much harder to overcome, when prosecution appears increasingly likely, when accountability finally arrives. All right, now let's look at what Meadows actually revealed and why it matters so much from both a legal and political standpoint. Because there are several layers here, multiple alleged criminal efforts that Meadows has provided evidence about. Multiple people could face charges based on what he has told prosecutors, and there are major consequences for how these cases move forward. So we need to examine the specific revelations, the documents, the legal arguments prosecutors may now pursue, and what this means for Trump and his alleged co-conspirators. Because Meadows flipping isn't only about Trump. It quote s about everyone connected to these efforts, and his testimony could affect dozens of people. Let quote s begin with the false fraud claims. At first glance, this may seem like politics, Trump claiming the election was stolen when it wasn't, quote, but legally it becomes a crime if Trump knew the claims were false and used them to support unlawful actions, that, quote, S fraud, that, quote, S conspiracy, and Meadows says he can show Trump knew. According to Mark Meadows' testimony, Trump was repeatedly informed by advisors, election officials, and even his own Justice Department that there was no evidence of widespread voter fraud. He was told recounts confirmed Biden's victory, yet he continued publicly claiming the election was stolen and used those claims to support efforts to overturn the results. Prosecutors argue this helps establish that Trump knew the fraud allegations were false. Meadows also testified about the alleged fake elector scheme, in which alternate electors were organized in states won by Biden. The plan was to create uncertainty during the January 6th certification process and potentially block or delay the transfer of power. According to Meadows, Trump participated in discussions about the strategy, approved it, and directed advisors to move forward. His testimony is backed by documents, meeting notes, text messages, and emails that prosecutors say show a coordinated effort involving White House officials and outside attorneys. Investigators view this evidence as important in establishing Trump's role in the plan. Another major focus of Meadows' testimony involves the pressure campaign on Mike Pence. In the days leading up to January 6th, Trump and his allies repeatedly urged Pence to reject certified electoral votes, arguing he had authority to do so during the congressional certification process. According to the allegations, Trump continued pressuring Mike Pence even after being told that Pence had no legal authority to reject electoral votes. Meadows reportedly described meetings where Trump pushed Pence to act and reacted negatively when Pence refused. Prosecutors argue this could help establish intent behind efforts to challenge the election results. Meadows' testimony could also support several legal theories, including conspiracy, obstruction of an official proceeding, and other offenses related to efforts to overturn the 2020 election. Investigators are examining communications, meetings, and actions connected to the fake elector plan and the events surrounding January 6th. Because Meadows served as Trump's chief of staff, his testimony is considered significant. He can provide first-hand accounts of discussions, decisions, and strategies inside the White House. Prosecutors may also use documents, emails, text messages, and meeting notes to support his claims. The testimony could have implications not only for Trump, but also for several advisors and attorneys involved in post-election efforts. Politically, it increases pressure on Republicans, who must decide whether to continue defending Trump or distance themselves from the allegations. Supporters of the investigations argue that Meadows' cooperation is a major development because he was one of Trump's closest advisors and had direct access to key events. They believe his testimony could play an important role as prosecutors continue reviewing evidence and building their cases. Supporters of the investigation argue that Mark Meadows' cooperation is significant because it could help prosecutors prove intent, one of the most important elements in any criminal case. According to the allegations, Meadows can testify that Trump was repeatedly told there was no evidence of widespread election fraud, but continued efforts to challenge the results anyway. Prosecutors view this as potential evidence that Trump knew key claims were false. Meadows' testimony is also supported by documents, including memos, emails, text messages, and meeting notes. Supporters of the case argue that this combination of insider testimony and documentary evidence makes the allegations more difficult to dismiss and strengthens the overall case. The investigation could potentially extend beyond Trump to other advisors, attorneys, and officials involved in post-election efforts. Prosecutors often build complex cases by securing cooperation from insiders, and Meadows' decision to cooperate could encourage additional witnesses to come forward. Politically, the allegations create challenges for Trump and his allies. Critics argue that testimony from a former chief of staff carries added weight because he was directly involved in key discussions and decision-making. Supporters of Trump, however, dispute many of these claims and continue to defend his actions. For now, prosecutors are expected to continue reviewing evidence and determining whether additional charges are warranted. The outcome remains uncertain, but Meadows' testimony is widely viewed as an important development in the ongoing investigations surrounding the 2020 election. Supporters of the investigation view this as a historically significant moment because it involves allegations that efforts were made to overturn the results of a presidential election. They argue that testimony from former White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows, along with documents and communications, has strengthened the case and increased scrutiny of Trump's post-election actions. Critics of Trump say Meadows' cooperation is particularly damaging because he was one of Trump's closest advisors and had direct knowledge of key events. They argue his testimony could play an important role in ongoing investigations and any future legal proceedings. The political impact has also been substantial. Lawmakers, legal experts, and commentators continue debating what the evidence means and whether it supports further action. Supporters of the investigations argue that the process demonstrates how democratic institutions respond to serious allegations, while Trump's supporters continue to dispute the claims and defend his actions. Regardless of the final outcome, many observers believe these investigations will remain an important chapter in American political history and will be studied for years to come as questions about elections, presidential power, and accountability continue to be debated.